Hey guys, I've been playing Terraria for many years of my life, and after many years, the game gets kinda stale. You know, using the same weapons, fighting the same bosses, it can all get very boring, so that's why I play with mods. But even with mods, my favorite class never seems to get much appreciation, the Summoner class. In all of the super grand Overhaul mods like Calamity, the Summoner class always has significantly fewer weapons than the rest, so I got to thinking, what would Terraria be like if my favorite class was beefed out of proportion? So I grabbed every summoner related mod I could find and became Terraria's ultimate summoner. Since I was using so many mods that added summons, I started off by mining trees, fully knowing that I would be able to make my first summon out of something like dirt and wood. While mining the wood, I also cleared out an area to start a house. I ended up crafting mildew armor out of wood and mushrooms and made the acorn staff, a summon weapon that summons a winged acorn. As soon as I made my first summon, a new menu appeared out of absolutely nowhere, kind of to the left of the minimap, and apparently one of the mods I added allows me to choose how my minions are coordinated and how they attack. Like, I can put them into two separate groups and make one group attack the strongest enemy while the other group attacks the closest enemy. It was all super duper cool. I then went mining to get all the boring stuff out of the way and ended up finding my second summon, the Shepherd Staff. It summons a tumbling sheep, and this guy could do some work. I stayed underground for quite some time and found a third summon weapon, the Rod of the Rat Keeper. It summons a horde of rats that ignore 10 enemy defense, and they were super duper good, but eventually I died, and when I respawned, I got to work on my house. I wanted to make something that I had never thought of before, so I made a sky base this time around. Once the outline of my gorgeous sky base was done and I was protected from all the elements, I made a whole bunch of summoner stuff. I made the shield staff. It summons a shield to protect me, obviously, and it provides me with extra defense, but the main reason I made it was because it was considered a complementary minion staff, which meant that I could use this summon and it wouldn't take up a minion slot. I made a platinum combat pet emblem, which increases damage, movement speed, and attack range of any combat pet that I end up finding at some point, eventually, hopefully. I made the mycelial staff. It summons a mycelial mage. I made some wooden braces to increase my whip damage by 4%, and I made a chain whip. It has 3 summon tag damage, which means that if I whip an enemy, all of my minions will deal an extra 3 damage to that said enemy. Once all of my crafting was done and I was feeling like a beast, I spent like a day and a half making the best house I have actually ever made in this game. Bro, are you kidding me? Alright, done with the house. Looking good, looking good. After the construction of my area of the house was done, I went mining again to make sure I was fully stocked up on all the ores I would ever need. When I got back, I upgraded my chain whip to the flaming whip and went right back down to find the remaining life crystals that I needed. At this point, my health was full, my arsenal was fire, and I was feeling super duper good, so I got back to work on my house for another chunk of time. I ended up adding a total of 12 rooms to my base, and my artistic abilities were flowing like a waterfall. Before I could finish the rooms, the Eye of Cthulhu spawned, and I got super duper close to beating it, but I died because I'm just way too slow at this point. Once it was morning, I made a whip called the Iron Tip and then upgraded that to the Molten Tip, which happened to be slightly more powerful than my chain whip that I was currently using, and it could set enemies on fire, so it was the obvious choice to go with. I then finished up the rooms and gathered up all the materials to make myself some Hermes boots just before night arrived. With my new whip and my new kicks, I was able to defeat the Eye of Cthulhu. Yeah, me and my sewer rats, me and my New York City sewer rats. We got him, he's done. Me and my New York City sewer rats, we got him. Check us out, check us out. Check us out, me and my New York City sewer rats. Ready? I'm gonna put a torch on me and my New York City sewer rats. We got them. Look how excited they are. Me and my New York City sewer rats, we got them. From the Eye of Cthulhu, I got everything that you usually get, but I also got a Mastery Shard that can be used along with any boss trophy to make the respective Master Mode pet, and then that Master Mode pet would be the combat pet. It also says that only 3 can drop per world, so I'm just gonna hold on to this for just a little bit, just until I defeat the Moon Lord. Since I can now use Crimtane, I made a handful of new items. I upgraded my wooden bracers to the fortified knuckles to have 10% increased whip damage. I made the Crimtane whip, it deals 20 damage, 6 summon tag damage, and heals upon enemy contact. I made the unstable detonator, a summon weapon that summons a bomb buddy, and I didn't think this minion was very good at first, but I'll use it more later on. And finally, I made the Crimson Combat Pet emblem to replace my Platinum one, despite still not having a combat pet. Afterwards, I used my creative prowess to make a beautiful room for my magic storage. I also made my base actually touch the ground so that it's not just floating in the air, because if it was, the structural integrity of my base wouldn't even be possible. I then went over to the Crimson, made a quick little arena, and managed to defeat the Brain of Cthulhu. And when I say this was the easiest Brain of Cthulhu fight I've ever fought, I actually mean it. Like, I did not struggle with this shit whatsoever. From the Brain, I got a new whip called the Tongue, and it was better than my Crimtane whip, but only because it attacks like twice as fast. When I got home, I got ambushed by a horde of goblins, so after killing a few, I went to the top of my base to hide from them. While I was up there, I made a Crest of the Crimson. It summons a Crimson Squire. There are a bunch of summons referred to as Squires, and these Squires are minions that you have to actually guide yourself, but because there's an added level of difficulty when using these guys, each of them has a special ability to compensate, this one being Flask of Ichor. I also made a Crimson Cell Staff, and this minion, it just sucked. It was really bad. In an attempt to escape all the goblins, I tried starting my elevator, but I had no luck with that. I was just too overwhelmed, so I just decided to defeat the goblins. While taking out an endless amount of goblins one by one, I learned that the unstable detonator is actually really good against big crowds of these guys. Once the goblin army was defeated, I noticed that all of my rooms were full, so I added 12 more, and I now live in an H. Like the letter H. I'm feeling like Handsome Jack right now. When the renovations were finished, I got to work on my elevator, mainly because I wanted to reach lava so that I could get obsidian and make obsidian armor. After lots and lots of mining and a bit more housework, I had finally reached lava and gotten enough obsidian to make the obsidian armor, but I didn't notice that I would also need a Hellforge. So I just went home for now and made the Band of Friendship, an equipable that increases my number of complementary minions by 1, and an extension cord, an equipable that grants me 15% whip range. I then summoned and defeated the King Slime. All I wanted from the King Slime was the Slimy Saddle, but he dropped another item called King's Gelatin, and it would increase my max number of minions by 1. King's Gelatin could also be brewed into a potion that grants me the same buff, so I spent a long ass time farming the King Slime for 60 King's Gelatin so that I could make an unlimited buff for both the gelatin and the potion. During this time, I went down and got a Hellforge so that I could make some obsidian armor and bought 30 summoning potions to get the unlimited buff of that as well. 6 rats instead of 3, 6 rats. Slime King feel my wrath with 6 rats. 9 rats now. Now I have 9 rats. Not just 3, not just 6, 9 rats. 12 rats. By the end of all this, I had 4 minion slots, and since I was still using my beautiful New York City sewer rats, I could summon 3 rats per minion slot, so I had a total of 12 beautiful New York City sewer rats, along with my 2 orbiting shields. Now that I was basically the ruler of this land with all of my rats, I took to the skies to acquire a pair of wings for myself. While getting the wings, I found a crest of the sky. It summons a squire called the Skyware Centurion, and its special ability was pretty badass. It shot like 3 or 4 arrows, and each one did like 100 damage. It was pretty crazy. Towards the end of the night, I went over to the dungeon to attempt the Skeletron, but since I got there way too late into the night, I just started the fight without an arena, and it was a massacre. I lost. It was a massacre. After that embarrassing loss, I noticed that all my rooms had already filled up, so I passed the time by adding a few more rooms. Once it was nearing night, I headed over to the dungeon, actually built an arena, and defeated the Skeletron, but just barely. Jesus Christ. God. I was lost right there at the end. I would have been so pissed. Oh, I would have been so pissed. He dropped me a Rod of Minion Guidance that'll force my minions to hover around like a selected area, and as cool as it seemed, I never ended up using it. I then went home and finished up the additional rooms I was making. Now that I had another 12 rooms for people to move into, I got to thinking about what gear I should make next, and then I remembered seeing something about a couple of whips that were built the same way you build the Knight's Edge, where you need like 4 whips to make the better whip, but I was missing like all of the pieces except for the Crimson Whip. So I headed to the jungle to gather up a bunch of vines, stingers, and spores to make the Snapthorn. Getting the vines, stingers, and spores was the easy part. The hard part was getting the honeycomb, but not because I would have to defeat the queen bee. No. It was finding a goddamn beehive. Like, I searched for so long and I just could not find one. Eventually I gave up and instead went to go get some meteorite to make a different part, the meteoric shredder. With the meteorite, I made quite a few things. I made the meteor fist, the meteor headstaff, and the meteoric shredder. The Meteor Fist was absolutely amazing. Like, it was literally the pure embodiment of a perfect minion. It was wonderful. The Meteor Staff sucked really, really, really bad, and the Meteor Shredder dealt like a lot of damage, but it was super slow, so it was alright. Afterwards, I went to go get the next whip, the Spinal Tap, so I went down into the dungeon to get some bones. While I was down there, I got this skeleton motorcycle summon that really sucked, and once I was home, I completely forgot about making the Spinal Tap, so I spent all of my bones on a new armor set, the Illusionist armor, and may I say, I look dapper as hell. I also grabbed an alchemy table while I was down in the dungeon, so I could now finally make the gelatinous potions, but they didn't give me another buff, and honestly, I should have known that, because the potion would have just gave me the same buff as the King's Gelatin was giving me, which is kind of weird, because if they both do the same thing, why would I ever take the King's Gelatin and turn it into potions? It just sounds like a lot more work for the same thing. Since the potions didn't work, I decided to go get Hellstone. With it, I upgraded my shield staff to the fiery shield staff, made the tiny star striker, made me some obsidian grippers, made a lava crystal staff, made a flaming ball staff, and finally made an infernal animator. I bought a bunch of Brain of Cthulhu summons to test out all of my new gear, and all of it sucked. Literally everything other than the fiery shield staff sucked. It was very, very disappointing. Oh, the obsidian grippers were good. They just gave me like a bunch of whip range and whip damage and whip speed. It's just stuff like that. It was very good. After that absolute shit show, I finally went back to the jungle, found a beehive, defeated the queen bee, and made the snapthorn. From the queen bee, I also got my first combat pet. It was a little bee that dumped buckets of honey that summoned honey slimes, I think. I'm honestly not totally sure what I was seeing. I then decided that it was time to start the Hell Highway, but before that, I quickly bought a bunch of potions for their unlimited buffs. Once I was down in Hell, I made the entire Hell Highway, in the shortest amount of time by the way, and defeated the Wall of Flesh on my very first try. Alright, there we go. Oh my god, that was... I did so much prep. Oh, actually, my bridge was almost done. Alright, that was good. That was good. When I got home, instead of opening the Wall of Flesh treasure bag, I used it to guarantee I got the firecracker. I then got some more bones to make the Spinal Tap and turned all of the whips that I had been making into the Knight's Cackle, a whip that deals 62 damage, 8 summon tag damage, and spawns additional Shadow Flame Skulls upon hitting enemies. I also actually started using the Bone Serpent Staff, a summoner weapon that dropped from the Wall of Flesh that summons a skeletal dragon. It's pretty much just a weaker version of the Stardust Dragon Staff, you know what I'm talking about. I tested out all of my new cool shit on the Wall of Flesh to actually get a treasure bag, and it did not stand a chance against me. And everything worked out perfectly, because I ended up getting the Summoner Emblem as well. After all this Wall of Flesh mumbo jumbo, I headed over to the Crimson to destroy some altars. I then got to mining the hard mode ores, but after a bit I realized that none of these ores make anything that I actually need other than the Orichalcum Anvil and the Titanium Forge, so I stopped mining and got to farming some spiders for their fangs. While I was filling my pocket up with spider teeth, one of them dropped a rideable spider mount, and this thing was disgusting. As gross as this thing looked, it was genuinely the coolest mount I have ever used in Terraria. It was just so versatile, like it could move just as fast as me while I was sprinting, and it could climb up walls and stick to ceilings. It was amazing. I used my awesome new spider mount to help me gather the rest of the fangs and made myself some spider armor. I also made the spider staff, but it felt really weird to not be using a modded summon when I'm using all these mods, so I ended up using it just for a little bit. It also turns out that my skybase was absolutely perfect for my new spider mount, so I removed all of the unnecessary platforms for greater spider mobility. Once I was looking like the man-spider version of Spider-Man, I finished gathering up the hard mode ores so that I can make the Titanium Forge. I also made a Titanium Crest that summons a Titanium Squire. He kinda sucked, but he was cute, so it's alright. With all the ore stuff done and out of the way, I went over to the Hollow to gather up a shit ton of pixie dust. Like, I gathered up almost 200 pixie dust. I then gathered up a bunch of Souls of Light and used both the souls and the pixie dust I got to make the Draconic Magma Staff, the Crystal Staff, and the Lady's Light. And guess what? They all sucked. All of them sucked. They all sucked. Afterwards, I gathered up a bunch of Souls of Night to see what they could make, and I ended up making the Nuke Caller. It didn't summon any sort of minion, it just summoned nukes from the sky that did an unbelievable amount of damage. Once night arrived, I felt pretty prepared to fight some mechanical bosses, so I started with the twins, and these guys were no match for all the nukes that I rained down on them. This new weapon is actually insane. This Nuke Caller is insane. I also noticed that my skeleton room guy wasn't really doing anything at all, so I needed to replace him ASAP. After that glorious dub, I was feeling so confident that I summoned the Skeletron Prime right after, and I smoked this guy as well. After yet another glorious dub, I was feeling so unbelievably confident that I summoned the Destroyer with only like 2 minutes left in the night. But I got way too cocky, and the Destroyer absolutely humbled the shit out of me. Once that crazy ass night had passed, I made myself some lightning armor using the lightning cores that I got from Nimbus Clouds right before the twins fight, and this armor summoned an electric orb above my head that dealt quite a bit of damage. There was this summon that I wanted to make called the Machine Gun Staff because it said it summoned a machine gun that does incredible damage, but I needed to make a Mega Shark first, and to make that I was going to need some shark fins, so I spent literally the entire day waiting for sharks to spawn so that I could tear their fin right from their body. By the time I had enough shark fins, it was night, so I summoned the destroyer and defeated it. I then made the machine gun staff, and I got totally baited. This weapon sucked so bad, like incredible damage my ass. Anyways, I then made the crystal fist staff, and this was literally just a better version of my meteor fist staff that was the pure embodiment of the perfect minion, and I could not have been happier with this new summon that I had. It was wonderful. Since the mechanical bosses had been defeated and were out of the way, I made a Drax and got to mining some chlorophyte. With the chlorophyte, I was able to make the true Durandal, but I didn't even have the regular Durandal, so I quickly defeated the twins again and made the true Durandal, and this whip was something else entirely. It dealt over 100 damage, 11 summon tag damage, and swung 2 true Durandals at the same time. It was amazing. It says it does over 100 damage, but it was pretty much doing over 200 damage. I also wanted to use the chlorophyte to make the true turtle battle grips, because it would increase my whip damage by 25%, so I summoned a blood moon and got to work on some turtles. I spent the entire night doing this and only got 1 turtle shell, but that's okay because I got a bunch of biomatter and used it to make myself some life bloom armor. This armor allowed my minions to have a 25% chance to heal me every hit. Afterwards, I fought a couple of frost elementals and sand elementals in order to make the stellar system, but if I use this I won't be able to use my true Durandal, so I just gave it up. Later that night, I summoned another blood moon and finished getting all the turtle shells that I would need to make the turtle battle grips. But I ran out of chlorophyte, so I went back to the jungle to find some. While doing this, I found a Plantera bulb and figured that I should just give it a go. If I hadn't gotten stuck, I would have won. If I hadn't gotten stuck, I would have won. If I hadn't gotten stuck, I would have won. This Plantera fight was going to be easy as hell, but I still wanted to prepare, so I went home and made the turtle battle grips. They gave me 25 increased whip damage, 18 increased whip speed, and 25 increased whip range. The battle grips also grant me 10 defense whenever I hit an enemy and reflect back double the damage taken from them. Once I was fully prepared, I made a half-assed arena in the jungle and defeated the Plantera in under 30 seconds. I ended up getting a new squire from the overgrown plant, and it was adorable. I mean, just look at the little guy, come on. Up next was the Golem, but before I tore him a new ass, I wanted to become even more powerful, so I got to doing some research and came across the Charm of Whips. Now, I wouldn't even be able to make this until I got an Ancient Manipulator from the Lunatic Cultist after the Golem, but I wanted to get everything done that I could right now so that it would be a breeze to make later on. For the first part of it, I went and found the Vine Whip cord, killed a hollowed mimic for a crystal vine shard, and got some Souls of Light. I then smushed all that together to make the crystal whip cord. To finish this first part, I needed a Spectre Staff and some Spectre Bars from the dungeon, so I headed on over there and got to farming. I farmed for a long ass time, and I got all the ectoplasm that I would need to make the Spectre Bars, but the Rugged Caster, the guy that drops the Spectre Staff, never spawned. Literally not even once. I don't know why it wouldn't spawn, but that was an issue for future Oklah, so I went home and got started on the next part, the Spirit Shackle. The first thing I needed to make was some golden rope, but I could only get the parts necessary to make it from the merchant during a party, so I put that off for now and instead made some X-ray goggles with normal goggles and some emeralds. Since the party still hadn't happened yet, I moved on to the next part, the tribal tip. I first made a spiked tip out of some spikes and bones from the dungeon and wrapped them together with some black thread. I then combined that spiked tip with a Shadow Flame knife I got from a goblin sorcerer and some Souls of Light to make the Shadow Flame tip. And to finish it off, I combined the Shadow Flame tip with a Pygmy staff I got from the Plantera and some Vials of Venom to make the tribal tip. The rest of the stuff needed for the Charm of Whips were just some random whips I needed to grab, so I made the Spinal Tap first and put off the other two till after the Golem was defeated. So to wrap everything up, I still need a Spectre Staff, I still need some Golden Rope, and I still need those 2 whips, the Shell Smasher and the Dark Harvest. Before I fought the Golem, I wanted to upgrade my True Knight's Cackle, so I summoned the Solar Eclipse and farmed Moth Runs until I got a Broken Hero Sword. I then combined my True Knight's Cackle with the True Durandal and a Broken Hero Sword to make the Coiled Serpent. You guys can pause to read all the stats and shit, but just look at her go against the Golem. Oh my god, what a whip. What an insanely powerful whip. Holy shit. From the Golem, I got a new ore called Sun Ore that can be smelted into sun bars and used to make a new armor, the Rainbow Armor. In order to make this armor, I needed rainbow gems, and those only dropped from the Empress of Light, so I headed over to the Hollow, stomped on a little prismatic lace wing, and defeated the Empress of Light, and this boss was actually kind of difficult. Once I was home, I made the armor, and check me out, bro. I mean, it looks kind of wonky, but I got 2 more minions left from it, so it'll be fine. I also upgraded my cold mechanical cord to the rainbow cord. It just increased all the stats that it already had by a little bit. Oh, I also got a little squire that was honestly more annoying than anything, to be honest. Okay, now that the golem was defeated and I had some sun bars, I made the next part of the Charm of Whips, the Sun Smasher. It was a pretty cool whip, but I liked my serpent one that I already had way more. I then planted some pumpkins so that I would be able to summon the pumpkin moon later in order to get the dark harvest. While those were growing, I went back to the dungeon to try getting the specter staff again, but a rugged caster just wouldn't spawn. Like, I stayed down there for the entire day and not a single one spawned. So I went home and checked to see if the deviant sold a rugged caster summon or something, and it actually did. So I just wasted all of my time trying to farm for one. I farmed a couple of casters, and once I got the specter staff, I grabbed my pumpkins and summoned the pumpkin moon to get the dark harvest. Once the event was done, I finished making the spectral whip cord. Now all I needed was the golden rope, so while I waited for a party to happen, I defeated the lunatic cultist for the ancient manipulator that was actually needed to craft this thing, and this fight was nowhere near fair whatsoever.
Damn, that really sucks for you.
Now I literally only needed to wait for a party to start, so I did some research on some other accessories to make and came across the Whip Master's Glory that I was definitely going to make. The only issue is that it required a bunch of vanilla accessories that I usually buy from an NPC called the Tinkerer, because getting them can just be boring as hell and annoying. But he kinda died while I was getting the Dark Harvest, so I was just going to have to wait for him to respawn. I don't want to bore anybody with all the details about the construction of this one, so I'm just going to say that getting the materials for this one was super easy, but waiting for the Tinkerer to respawn was annoying as hell. While waiting for this guy to respawn, I made a new squire that I had to murder the guide for, and took down the Stardust Pillar to begin crafting with Stardust. I first used it to make the Shining Sextant, a new mount that summoned a fucking bird god and its babies or something, and this guy was not only fast, but he could teleport! Bro could teleport through walls, it was awesome. I also made the Star Lash, but it just wasn't as cool as my Cold Serpent, so I never used it. At this point, I now needed to wait for a party to make the Charm of Whips, and I needed to wait for the Tinkerer to respawn to make the Whip Master's Glory. So I decided that I would start by making another accessory, the Amulet of Many Minions. Again, I'm not going to bore you with this one either, but while I was out getting materials for it, the Tinkerer respawned, so I headed straight home and finished the Whip Master's Glory. It provides me with 8 defense, 5 summon tag damage, periodically swings extra whips while using an item, increases my max minions by 2, and gives me a 20% increase to just about every summoner stat. I wanted to equip all these accessories at the same time, so I finished getting the stuff for the Amulet of Many Minions and made it. It increases my max minions by 2 and greatly improves minion damage. Once those 2 accessories had been made, all I needed was a goddamn party, so I went over to the party girl and just bought a bunch of different things to try and conjure up a party.
Does that count? Holy shit, does that count? Oh my god, it counts. Let's go. Let's go.
I was now finally able to finish the Spirit Shackle and make the Charm of Whips. It launches 2 whips above and below my main whip, increases whip range, damage, and speed by 12%, adds 5 summon attack damage, and allows my whips to attack through walls. Yes, through walls. I equipped all of them and now had 13 minion slots, so I tested out everything on the rest of the pillars and it was all just amazing. Once the pillars were down, the Moon Lord spawned and he stood no chance against the ultimate summoner. The Moon Lord had been defeated and I now had Luminite, so I made the Staff of the Sacred Sapling, and this guy was looking like the Great Deku Tree from The Legend of Zelda, and this guy literally threw trees to attack enemies. It was absolutely nuts. I spent the next few days gathering up a shit ton of whips in order to upgrade my Coiled Serpent into its final form, the Origin. This all-powerful whip swung with the force of all the whips I had ever come across. With this new gear, there was only one thing left to do. Defeat the Primordials.
I have one final challenge. I have been using the Thorium mod for some of these items, and I have the Primordials to defeat. I've already made the summon, but let's get my guys out. Alright, everybody's here. Oh, the gang's all here. We got the rats. We got the, what the hell are you guys called? We got the rats. We got the charred chimera. We got we got the crystal fist staff. We brought back the old molten fist staff, or meteor fist staff. Sorry, and then we got the great Deku tree to back everybody up. Our legendary origin. Let's take these fools to town. Alright, here we go. Here we go. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my. Oh my. I'm speechless. And the primordials are dead, just like that. It's over with. The primordials, the primordials are dead, just like that. It's over. It took like 30 seconds to defeat them. Whereas when I did my actual Thorium playthrough, the boss fight took me like 13 minutes. 30 seconds, not even. That was insane. I got some Inferno Essence from the Primordials and used it to make me some Pyromancer armor. It gave me my 14th minion slot and 2 sentry slots, but can anybody tell me how I can summon 12.998001 out of 14 minions? It just doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make sense in my head. I also made the Ember Staff and the Promethean Staff. The Ember Staff summons an Ember of Slag Fury that deals 421 damage, and the Promethean Staff summons one of the Primordials as a sentry. It was... They were both really, really good. With my new gear, I brought forth the Primordials once more to show the world that I was now the ultimate summoner. Alright. Even faster this time. Even faster.